Hey there, critters! Welcome to Enthusiastic Encouragement and Dubious Advice, the podcast for folks who would rather curl into the fetal position than lean in. I'm your host, Patricia Tuttle.
And I'm glad you're here. Thanks for joining us. I'm Nicole Tuttle, and we're recording this show on February 14th, 2025. Oh, it's Valentine's Day, isn't it?
It is Valentine's Day.
Has it been so all day?
Yeah, we work today, so.
Yeah. Barely knew.
Old married people. Let's see, what have we done since we last spoke to everyone?
We watched a couple of documentaries.
We did. We're usually not great at actually sitting down and watching things.
And if we do, we don't always finish them.
That's
especially
true,
if they're like a TV series or something.
Yeah, we watched Will and Harper, finally.
We did. We finally watched Will and Harper.
What did you think?
Overall, I think I enjoyed it. I think we talked about this a lot. I think it's a good entry point for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, I don't think that necessarily the audience is trans people who already have trans community and things like that. But I think a lot about maybe the elders in my life who are cisgender and straight, and it might be a good entry point for them.
Especially if they like Will Ferrell.
Especially if they like Will Ferrell.
Yeah. I don't think it's like the best example of what life is like as a trans person for everybody.
Absolutely not. Well, and also trans people aren't a monolith, so.
That's very true. But I think it is a good example for seeing what it's like for people who maybe come to their transness later in age.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad we watched it.
I am too. And we were inspired by your recent typewriter purchase?
Yes. So we went into the typewriter shop to bring my typewriter for some TLC. And the guy there told us to watch a documentary called California Typewriter. It's from 2016. And he's like, hey, you may recognize someone in the film. And he's like the guy in the film.
Yeah, it kind of follows him for a good chunk of the film.
Yeah, no, I loved it. I'm starting to get obsessed with typewriters, which I think is hilarious because watching this documentary, it's just like, oh, it's just a lot of white dudes.
Yeah. It's also a little concerning because typewriters, unlike books, like they take up a lot more space per typewriter.
I mean, yes. But they make such a nice sound.
They do. And we already don't have enough shelves for the books. Shh. Where are we going to put?
Don't worry about it.
The Elsie Tuttle typewriter library.
Don't worry about it.
I am a little worried about it.
We'll work it out.
I'm sure we will.
It's fine. I only have that one right now, and
another one you informed me is in a box in the office. Somewhere.
Yes, that I inherited from my grandmother. So yes. We'll pull that out.
And potentially the one I might buy this coming weekend.
If we find one.
If we find one.
So
I said potentially might.
But you know what? I really enjoyed the movie. It gave me a lot to think about, gave me a lot to react to as you experienced watching it with me. And I paused it every 2 minutes to yap.
I liked it though. I thought it was a good experience sitting with you and like being able to pause it and share our thoughts on like what we just saw, because it is a documentary, right? It wasn't like a 2-hour like movie that has like a single like fictional through line where like pausing it would be like, okay, we don't need to comment on like everything that character says. But this was like, oh yeah, like, okay, that guy's building, I don't know, mechanical animals out of typewriter parts. Sure.
Yeah, well, and a lot of it took place here in the Bay Area, too.
That, too. So you were also stopping it and being like, I know where that is.
Exactly. But California Typewriter, it was fun. I recommend you give it a watch if you're into something niche.
Like typewriters.
Like typewriters, specifically. Also, before we get into it, We want to remind you that we have a Patreon. You can find it at patreon.com/EEDApod, and support there helps us keep this show going without ads. You can join our little community over there. And also, we have a bookshop affiliate kind of storefront, so you can shop any of the books we've mentioned on this show and also books I've mentioned in my newsletter or otherwise. And that bookshop link is available on edapod.com. Up at the top, you can access our Patreon, you can access our bookshop, so you can find everything there. So I want to start out this show by apologizing because I have realized that I am part of a problem. Hi, it's me, I'm the problem, it's me, etc. To be fair, this is something I see many people perpetuate. People I generally agree with in regards to things like human rights, healthcare, etc. The thing I do is this. I tell people to look it up or do their own research, and then I have the nerve to get annoyed that they don't find the information I intended them to find for various reasons.
Part of this is down to like algorithms and like how you search, but also how the search engines feed you results is kind of dependent on your own personal browser history and stuff. But as you have also taught me, because you studied it in grad school, there's this whole idea of like information seeking behavior, and like not everybody is searching the web in the same way. And if you aren't telling people like where to get that information or really directing them to the information that you're using as a source, then there's a high chance that they're not finding the same information as you. And God forbid they might just end up on YouTube listening to some guy who makes hour-long videos wearing hats made of tinfoil.
Yeah, I think people do a similar thing when they're like, listen to Black women, but then the person they're talking to goes and listens to Candace Owens, and they're like, ew, not her. Which there's a whole wider conversation about the whole listen to Black women suggestion, which we have in a past episode called Should We Expect Black Women to Save the US? That will link in the show notes.
Folks also say things like, learn your history or read a book, but then not tell people the resources or books to read. And then with that same breath, when asked to do that, be like, I don't need to do free labor, which, fair, like not everybody needs to do the free labor of providing people with their resources. We, however, we're here to do that labor for you. And in this podcast and also in the newsletter, the EEDApod newsletter, and that's really our choice to do that. We're not asking people to do that. And also, we're pointing out that without clarity and direction, a kind of look it up response will not always get people the knowledge you intend for them to receive.
Yeah, though, story time. Once years ago, an elder family member posted something online about the salary of the President of the United States, and I responded that what he posted is disinformation, and his truly awful wife was like, oh yeah, what is it then? I said, Google is free, I am not, and I posted my PayPal link. And then she blocked me, and I haven't had to interact with her for years in person or otherwise, and it's beautiful. No regrets. 10 out of 10. Highly recommend.
That's some good intentional pettiness.
Yeah.
It's not Super Bowl halftime show level pettiness, but...
I mean, we all have something to work toward.
Aspirational pettiness.
Aspirational pettiness.
All that aside, we've kind of done something similar on our show when we've just been like, make a list of your skills or find community. And yes, we've talked about some ways to find community in past episodes, but there's definitely been some things we've left out. So I think we're going to start there today.
Yeah. I recently shared a mutual aid guide, like a mutual aid how-to from the Progressivists in the EEDA newsletter, and that will definitely get linked in the show notes. And it mentions how mutual aid is horizontal, not hierarchical. And it made me think about how strong community is about giving and receiving. Many of our friends are out of the same mold as us, and we're happy to give and give and give and show up at a moment's notice, but we struggle with the receiving. We struggle with the trust and the vulnerability in asking for help.
If that sounds like you, you may want to check out our episode from February 2024 titled Everyone Deserves Help, Except for Me. And we'll leave a link to that in our show notes too.
We're going to have a hefty show notes. If you are only willing to give and not receive, that is charity. That is not mutual aid. That is not community. If this is you, I highly recommend not only listening to that episode, but unpacking this, possibly with a mental health professional if you have access to one.
If you don't have access to a therapist and would like one, we recommend checking out our past episode, How to Find a Therapist, especially if you're queer or BIPOC. And we'll leave a link to that in our show notes.
We're really trying to help everyone here. We're trying to give you all what you need. We got a crash course in this whole being vulnerable, asking for help, and trusting community when my mom got sick. You know, I'm an only child and it was only us, and we were thrown into an absolute garbage situation, and very quickly and very suddenly, and friends would show up and bring us anything from paper towels to picking up our laundry and doing our laundry. And one of my cousins was really moved by the amount of my friends and even coworkers that showed up to my mom's funeral.
In some ways, that was kind of a humbling experience to force ourselves to be on the other end of what we give a lot of the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, and it was a terrible experience, and I think I learned from it.
We learned a lot from that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing about community that we want to make really clear here is that when we say community, we're not saying, or we don't just mean the friends that you hang out with. Not everyone in your community is also your friend. Your community includes your neighbors, your coworkers, your mail carrier, the person who does your hair. You said our UPS driver.
Yeah. Our UPS driver is really cool, though.
He is really cool. I'll give you that. But we also mean our elders and children.
It is wild to me how many people are like, I want community. But then they're like, ew, kids. I don't like kids. And kids are part of community too. And maybe what you actually want is friends. And I will die on this hill. Nicole, you and I are child-free, and I think kids are great and that they have just as much value as any other people. And as for older people, the first time you took me to meet your family, I ended up spending multiple hours with your grandfather. And I appreciate elders so much, and I really need everyone else to get on board.
Yeah, what we're trying to say is we really encourage you to think expansively about who can be or is in your community. Start close, but allow for growth.
I want to switch gears a bit and talk about what we mean when we keep saying, make a list of your skills. I realize when I say that, there's some things I'm leaving unsaid, which is I'm also implying resources and privileges, generally things that you as an individual can offer or leverage for others. For skills, not everything is baking bread over a campfire or weaving your own fabric.
Wait, so this also doesn't mean that weird list you put at the bottom of your resume that's I can type 90 words a minute. I have experience with Excel, PowerPoint, and Microsoft Word.
Okay, so the thing is I don't put that anymore, not only because it's outdated, but I have seen you as an Excel wizard, and I'm like, wow, I don't know crap. I don't know anything about Excel compared to you, and I have no business putting it on anything describing myself.
And I'm not even like, I still don't know what a pivot table is. So I'm hesitant for the Excel wizard label. I do a lot without things like pivot tables. But sure, like when it comes to lists of skills, I used to be an EMT and I still retain some of those first aid skills and knowledge. And I also know how to talk to medical people. I seem to have a knack for project management. I can keep my head in a crisis. I like long walks on the beach.
Like pizza, puppies.
Oh, yeah, those are good too.
I have a number of soft skills, and I'm like, I hate using that term because these skills are so incredibly important, and we need to think of another word. Interpersonal skills, I guess, maybe. Why are you giggling?
Don't worry about it.
Like the ability to get along with a lot of different people and the ability to take something complicated, something that I already understand, and be able to teach it in a more accessible way.
But there are so many more things your skills can be. Can you build a website? Can you analyze data? Do you know where to get a list of potential donors or something, or people who can help provide resources to your community? Can you write? Are you a good writer? Can you cook? Can you cook large amounts of food at once? Can you drive? Can you speak more than one language? Do you have a printer?
Yeah, when you mentioned like, do you have a printer? I was like, well, one, we do not. We literally just went to the library the other day so that I could print out some sheet music that I bought.
Yeah, we don't have a printer.
But that is actually a really handy thing to be able to offer to people.
Yeah.
Thinking about the can you drive brings me to resources. I think a lot of people who are well resourced don't actually think of a lot of the things they have as a resource. Do you have a reliable vehicle? Can you give people a ride? Do you have possibly even a big vehicle that can maybe move big items or like 50 flats of water bottles? Do you have a spare room? Do you have a home big enough to host a meeting or a dinner? Do you have food to share? Like, I know that sometimes I cook enough food for many people and it's just the two of us.
Time and money are always important and should go on your list of resources if you have them. Can you offer childcare? Can you fix or mend things? I think that's a big one. Like, can you help?
Well, and not only can you fix or mend things, but can you teach people how to fix and mend things? Like, can you pass on that knowledge?
Yeah, which I think being able to teach skills is another skill. Do you have your own washer and dryer where you can do laundry or let people use it to do some laundry?
Yeah, I think about that one a lot too. If listeners know anything about me, then you know that knowledge sharing is pretty much my whole thing, and not just, practical how-to knowledge. I've been known to share insights I've gotten from my therapist because not everyone has that access. One of my skills is finding information and finding resources and then sharing them.
We essentially have a small library, and a fair bit of that is nonfiction and cookbooks. If you have something like that, can you share information from that, or how much information in your home library can be useful to other people? Do you have like recipes or things that are kind of easy to cook that you can also share over a text message?
I always encourage friends, like whenever we have friends over, to take pictures of the recipes out of our cookbooks. And, blah, blah, copyright. But I bought these books.
I don't know. I love this idea of being part of a community, and you being a person that people can text you and be like, I've got 2 boxes of pasta and 6 lemons. What do you got? And you can be like,
Recipe Sherlock.
And be like, do you also have some heavy cream and some Parmesan? All right, I've got something for you.
Well, I was talking to a friend about how her family makes fried chicken on New Year's Eve. And I'm like, oh, I wish I had like a little plug-in fryer because I want to figure out how to make donuts and beignets. And we were talking about like, what if we just had a communal fryer that we would just share the appliance, and because it's not something we'd use every day, and really thinking about it's like, oh, what things can you share around?
I mean, we've got a couple of kitchen appliances that I'd be willing to like let our close friends borrow.
Absolutely.
But that's close friends. I'm working on it with the whole community thing.
You're working on it.
I didn't grow up with that, so
Working on it.
Working on it.
But yeah, it's like, what do we have that like not everyone needs to own one?
That's a real big concept, that not everyone needs to own one. Like,
yeah.
I think we talked about this in the last time we mentioned it, with the idea of like a community lawnmower.
Yeah.
Right? Like, not everyone's mowing their lawn every day. Like, you could easily have like 7 different houses share one lawnmower. Yeah. Like, another thing to think about is, especially when it comes to like other things that you may have to offer, do you have a Costco card? And specifically, can you offer to split the cost of items that can be purchased in bulk for less money with other people? Like, the Costco thing of paper towels.
We are 2 people, like.
And that like takes up a whole shelf in the closet. Like, I would gladly split that with like 2 other people's.
Yeah. Yeah, 2 other households.
Yeah. Households, peoples.
The other thing that a friend brought up the other day is, do you work at a large company that does donation matching? For those of you who don't know, some bigger companies like tech companies, media companies, and such do donation matching. So if their employees say donate to a nonprofit, like it has to be a certain kind of nonprofit, like a 501c3 or something like that. But say I give $100 and then I work for a company that doesn't match. Maybe they'll also throw in $100 to that same org that I donate to. So what one could do if they work for said companies, and you didn't hear it from me, is say, hey, I work for one of these companies. All of my friends, everyone give me $20 and I'll throw it all in under me. And then we'll get that match, and we will actually be able to give more money to these groups that are doing really important work.
I really love this idea. Like, really leveraging some of those kind of opportunities. This gets to kind of this one other area that we've been dancing around a little bit right here, which is privileges as another kind of thing to examine as a resource. Like, do you have a job where you can give a referral or offer mentorship? Can you use your whiteness as a layer of protection? And I'm not necessarily talking about physical violence here, but I'm also not talking about physical violence here. But this could also be like protection against predatory banking practices. Or can you go with someone to something like a medical visit and help them speak up to ensure that they are getting the care they need?
Yeah, I've seen, some groups will have people go wait with someone, maybe for SNAP benefits or for unemployment and things like that. A lot of maybe legal things, and just like be a person to not only drive people there, but to be there and help them talk through these things that they may be unfamiliar with and things like that. And it's just, yeah.
I've seen some communities also organize and have someone just go wait in the waiting room if someone's going to the ER or something, so that the people know that they have someone waiting for them on the other side. It shows the hospital that they have people, and just being there in that way also.
Yeah.
Like, yes, they'll probably need a ride when they get out, but also just knowing that you're not alone there
Yeah, that's
is
so
also a
important.
really big and important aspect of this kind of community thing.
Yeah.
Making sure people aren't alone. And we didn't touch on that really.
No, but I feel like that is like foundational,
It's
right?
foundational, but we
It's
didn't say it. And
yeah, and it's, you know, and it's also, it plays out in the past, you know, 4 weeks or so that I've been sending even just a lot of messages, just checking in on people, just
mhm.
and making sure again people know they're not alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We kind of whirlwinded a little bit there. Um,
Absolutely.
sounds like something we're starting to get doing regularly.
Yeah, hey, we're getting comfortable. A year
A
and
year
and
in,
change in.
34 episodes in, we're getting comfortable. Patricia, what do you want to make sure our listeners take away from this episode?
What I want our listeners to take away is something I actually took away as I was writing the first draft of this script, which is we all have more skills and resources than we initially think we do.
Well, you all might.
I'm still, just as we talk through things, I'm still like, oh yeah, we have that. Oh yeah, we can do that. Or I have that ability. Or
Now,
I have that knowledge.
I sat down to look at this and went, nope, I got nothing.
You're like, I've never done anything in my life.
Right?
Hey, we know how to put together a podcast.
You know what?
We know how
Yeah.
to record a podcast.
And
yeah.
we've got like the tools to do it.
And we have the equipment as well. So,
Ooh.
Nicole, what do you want people to take away?
I really want people to broaden their concept of who is or can be in their community. Think beyond just like your immediate family or your close circle of friends and really broaden that out. I love the idea of including the UPS driver.
Yeah, I'm not going to say his name on the podcast, but like he knows my name from all the books that show up. So I got his name.
But also, like in the hot summer days, we make sure that we have like little cold Gatorades.
Yeah, and little bottles of water in the fridge that we give to the delivery people. So
yeah. Gosh, the idea of asking you what's filling your cup in this current age feels both like a heavy ask, but an important one. So
yeah, I think we're both really doing our best to cling to joy wherever we can find it.
yeah.
And also, I'm really leaning into what is giving me pleasure right now. Even little things like this week, I cooked so much.
You did.
I cooked multiple things. Usually I cook like one big thing on Sundays and then we eat that through the week, but that was filling my cup this week. And the other thing is I have convinced you to go back to the Oakland Museum of California White Elephant Sale.
One more time.
Yeah, and last time we were there for like 3 hours, but it still felt very like whirlwindy and we had all we could carry. So I think this time I want to maybe take a little more time and look at the areas we didn't get to look at.
Yeah, it's difficult because you're not allowed to bring a basket.
You're not allowed to bring a basket. So whatever you buy, you have to carry.
Yeah.
And, you know, I bought something heavy first thing. So I was lugging around a typewriter for 3 hours.
It might be my turn to do that.
It might be your turn to do
We'll
that.
find out. We'll see what we find.
Nicole, what is filling your cup right now?
I sent a piece of mail.
Yay!
To a friend, and it felt so good to get that put together, and I want to do it more.
Yeah.
And I am so tired.
Yeah, I think on some days I've sent a number of postcards recently.
You've been doing a lot of postcards.
I've been doing a lot of postcards.
Which our mail carrier struggles with finding in our mailbox sometimes. But
that's true. And also one of my friends just sent me a picture of the postcard I sent. I used a fountain pen and the ink is water soluble, and their mailbox got attacked by the rain. So the postcard is mostly just a blur.
It's like a watercolor.
It's a mystery of what I wrote. Like some of it is just like no letters at all.
Oh, wow.
So cool.
You can watercolor with fountain pen ink.
Exactly. So I didn't know it was going to rain so hard, or else I wouldn't have used that ink. But
it did rain hard.
Well, that's our show for today. We'd like to thank our awesome audio editor, Jen Zink. You can find her at loopdeloo.com, and we'll leave a link to that in our show notes.
You can find the full show notes and transcript at eedapod.com. That's EEDAPOD.com. There, you can also find a link to our Patreon, our bookshop link, and a link to the ongoing Enthusiastic Encouragement and Dubious Advice newsletter. You can also find us on Instagram and Blue Sky at EEDAPod, and email us at eedapod@gmail.com.
We are nothing if not consistent.
We would also appreciate it so much if you would subscribe and rate us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts that allow ratings. It goes really far in helping other people find our show.
We would also appreciate anyone who can subscribe to us on Patreon. Support is going to help us keep the show going, especially without ads. You can find us at patreon.com/EEDAPod. In the meantime, we hope you find ways to be kind to yourself. Drink some water and read a book. We'll be talking to you soon.
Did I refer to your newsletter as the EEDAPod newsletter?
I have no idea.
I think I did, and I've been spending this whole show trying to figure out what that would be. Would it be a newsletter where we send out a copy of the podcast?
The transcript?
Mm.